Okay, thank you. Next, I'd like to invite Natan Linder, Chairman of Formlabs and CEO and founder of Tulip, as he moderates the next panel on upskilling through automation.
You want us up?
Are we on?
We're on.
Is this on? Hello, everyone. Nice to see you here. Thank you for coming. It's always great to follow Rod. There can't be a better topic to start, our chat than robotics, basically, because we're here in this panel talking about upskilling through automation. But we're actually going to focus on humans. So I'll start quickly by introducing this panel, and we're going to keep it pretty interactive and looking forward for a robust, interesting discussion. So first, we have Bill Bonvillian, who is a lecturer with MIT and senior director of Open Office Learning, and his latest book is on workforce education, a new roadmap written together with Professor Sanjay Sarma. Welcome. And then next we have Andrew Chrostowski. I got it right?
Yeah.
Okay, I practiced that one. Who's the chairman and CEO of Realwear, who is a leader in assisted reality wearable solutions. And last but not least, my good friend Etienne Lacroix, who is the founder and CEO of Vention, who have a very cool demo, along with the Realwear demo down there in the digital factory of Vention, which is a customized machine robot cell design cloud platform, which is pretty awesome. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks.
So, quick forward for me, and before I jump into a discussion that I think will have a lot of fun. Look, I basically spent more than a decade watching people on shop floors. And in this decade plus, there have been almost like infinite discussions on software, hardware, and more buzzwords than we all want to care to hear again. But the discussion on human wear has been quite minimal. And the reality, and I don't know how Rod would respond to that, but that production systems are not going to just ignore humans going forward. In fact, just a couple numbers to keep it interesting and have us have some scale to the discussion. So the contribution to manufacturing globally is 13.4 trillion. In the US, fourth quarter numbers are 2.7 trillion. This is National Association of Manufacturing and World Bank numbers. The impact of manufacturing on economies, if you put $1 into manufacturing, you get back $2.68 in production. And today we're missing about 800 people in manufacturing, and by 2030 in this country alone about 4 million. And we don't really know where are we going to get them. And I think Bill will have a good thing to say about that. So my focus was kind of thinking where we're just going to fail doing digital if we are not taking humans into account, and how we need to usher a new way of digital transformation that is basically, I feel, just beginning. So this is exciting times. That's the good news. And we're going to discuss it today. And the structure is going to be 3 layers. So we're going to start with the workforce level. Then we're going to go to the organizational level and think about how next-gen organizations are gearing up towards this kind of transformation. And then to the worker level. So let's begin with that. And I'll start with you, Bill. What's wrong with America's workforce education, and what do we need to do about it?
So, let me talk big picture. It's not a system, it's a non-system, but let's look at this non-system for a minute. And what are some of the plagues that affect it? So we've got a profound disconnect between work and learning in the United States, right? There's a huge gap between the education system and the work world, right? We don't connect them well. European countries, it's a much more seamless pathway, right? And that turns out to be a huge problem that underlies our whole situation. We've had a history of disinvestment by government and by employers in the past. We've got federal agencies. The Labor Department addresses the unemployed and the underemployed, but they don't reach the kind of upskilling we need to engage in now to kind of bring our incumbent workforce up, right? It's not working on those new technical skills that we really need. And on the other hand, the Education Department, we've got a huge program of Pell Grants, student aid, but those are for the college bound, right? That's not for workforce education. And then the programs of the two agencies, they don't connect. And then in turn, in every state, there's a Labor Department, there's an Education Department, and those agencies fund up the programs in the same stovepipes, replicating the problem in state after state after state. We dismantled the vocational education system pretty much. It was a reform movement at the time because it was a broken system, but it left us with emptiness in all too many states. We've got underfunded community colleges. The resources in a state go to 4-year schools. They don't go to 2-year schools. And the 2-year schools have a really serious completion rate problem. Universities are not engaged. They don't think it's their problem, even though they own the crucial credential now. The crucial credential in society is that bachelor's degree. That determines how well you're going to do in life, frankly. It's the best determinant, right? So they own the credential, but they don't think it's their problem. They think it's somebody else's problem, so they're not engaged.
So
and then in turn, we have lifelong learning that we're not doing, which we're going to have to move to.
So what do we do about that? What's the quick solution
Natan,
before we go?
There's no single silver bullet, right? But if you ask an American what high school is, or if you ask an American what college is, they know, right? You ask an American what the workforce education system is, they're clueless, right? We have not built a system. So there's not a single step we're going to take here. But we're really going to have to work on standing that new system up.
Okay, we'll circle back to that. Etienne,
Sure.
let's go to, this is, a tough question, but, you can take it. It's like we had like a decade of Industry 4.0. And what did we actually get? What's your summary?
Yeah, we were talking about that last night. I think it depends who got what, right? I think if you're a large manufacturer, you might have seen some benefit of the recent technology. But if you're a high-mix, smaller manufacturer, which is the bulk of the manufacturing facility in the United States, you really haven't seen the benefit yet. And I think it comes down to two reasons. One is cost. Those technology are expensive. And they're not only expensive because the tech itself, the hardware tech and the software tech, they're expensive to deploy. I always say there's nothing more manual than industrial automation. To deploy those industrial technology on your floor, there's a lot of project hour from very qualified engineers that need to take place to connect all your legacy machine into the cloud and eventually build all the software you need to have the full Industry 4.0 vision. So one is cost. The other one is just those technology are just simply too complex for the type of manufacturing workers we see in factories. They've been designed with high throughput persona in mind, where there is a team of dedicated engineers and dedicated scientists that can leverage those tools. But again, in most manufacturing floor, that's not always the worker you found. So if you don't democratize those technology and makes them accessible to the general worker you found in factories, you just limit adoption. So the problem for me for Industry 4.0 was not so much about the technology, to echo a point Carl Bass made earlier, was the delivery model was wrong to the factory.
So how do we change that?
It's also a very, very good question. And I think Tulip will be an example of that. There's other companies that do great work, but we're finally to a point where industrial tech is getting consumerized or democratized. And that, to me, changed everything, right? That's really how we're going to uplift the entire manufacturing sectors, by giving tools directly to the practitioners. Folks that used to operate machine are now have tools that they can use to create the floor and obviously continuously improve the floor. And they're accessible to them. You don't need an engineering degree to use those tools. You need to have some manufacturing savviness, and you can learn by doing. You can learn in trade school. You can learn in vocational school, to echo your point. And that really changed everything. And those technology were just, or those democratization technology were not available before.
Yeah, I totally agree. Obviously, that democratization is an important thing, but this basically brings us to Andrew. And you know, you've been focused on wearable tech, which I guess has known ups and downs, I'd say, the past few years. And the question I have for you is, how do operators, if we're actually talking about upskilling, and how do they actually pick up the technology? And how do you see your customers encourage them to actually accept them over a long period of time?
Yeah, and those are two excellent questions that have really, I think, defined the industry for a while. But I think the secret, and we've heard so much about this over the last couple of sessions about culture and company culture and the importance of people. For us, it's joy. It's the Realwear smile. When someone puts on a device that's a wearable, it's something you put on and you interact with it and it does what you expect it to do. So that's the starting point of understanding this idea that you can work with something. And then we talk about this culture of trust, because there's such a problem that we've had in manufacturing, and it predates, you know, Taylorism and scientific management all the way back in terms of management and people doing frontline work. And so the more trust you can build in that relationship, the more humanistic you can make it, the more you can do change management. And as we all know, change management is difficult in its easiest implications. If there's lack of trust, it's that much harder. So we approach it from a couple points of view. Number one, that we believe that these connected workers are intrinsically more connected to their customer. They are inherently more interactive with their peers and therefore more connected to their business. So that connection alone is a value of human connection. The second thing is that we see that connection to data, real time, to being able to interact and collaborate with remote experts in real time, hands-free, while they're in situ doing work, that creates a sense of empowerment that actually allows them to do more and be more. It actually addresses some of the training concerns we have about upskilling people with this demographic trend of lack of skilled workers. And so those three things, that engagement, that empowerment, and elevating that performance, which we then reward, becomes a self-fulfilling success cycle. So two examples, if I may, really quick, in terms of how this interacts. One, from the point of view of maybe the biggest part of the company, which is that you take a company like Volkswagen that used to have 20+ engineers and technicians sitting in Germany who would fly all over Europe to solve the tough technical problems for cars that were stuck in dealerships, right? And they would fix the problems the other mechanics couldn't fix. When they deployed our technology, this is the way the world works. Those guys stay at home and work 8 to 5 now. They're not on planes traveling everywhere. They're able to do more jobs per day because they're not losing that time. But let's think about what's happening at the dealership level. The customer is happy because their car isn't in the shop. It gets repaired faster, so there's some joy there, right? The technician feels positive because he now was part, or she was part of solving the problem rather than being pushed aside by the technician coming in from Munich to solve the problem. So there's benefit there. The dealer is happy because they got paid for the repair that's done, and the company has lowered its cost to operate this system. They've lowered their carbon footprint because they're not flying people around, and they've improved their brand positioning. So this cycle of doing things better is one way that gets reinforced. Take it down another level to the individual operator. Let's go to a big engine manufacturer that used to do, these big heavy engine manufacturers used to look at 20-point inspection would take 30 minutes. And they would, with a pen and a clipboard, identify those defects they found, at the end of the line and go back and dutifully report them. It took about 30 minutes to do this inspection. When we gave them a device that they could interact with, hands-free now, they didn't have to go back and forth to the table with their clipboard and their pen. They could stepwise go through, and there's a great example in the back there. Please see the potential of stepwise instructions in context that we did here with our friends at Tulip. It's really, you'll get an idea of what I'm talking about here. Stepping them through an inspection process, which, by the way, they can then document with a photograph. Now think about that. They're now able to focus on their task completely. They're not going back and forth. They're not cognitively switching, all right? And now they're doing those inspections in 12 to 13 minutes instead of 30 minutes. and they're finding 3 times as many defects. So the employer is happier, the employee feels empowered, and so I say that really the success cycle here is this positive reinforcement of doing things better where the person feels this human-centric technology is making them more proud of the work they're doing.
Yeah, this is great. And this actually led us to the second part of this panel, which is, kind of talked about challenges. And we're going to do 2, so you took us through great 2 example of success stories, and I'm going to go to you, Etienne. Like, okay, so yeah, Industry 4.0 is challenging, and you scaled Vention, you've seen a bunch of successful stories. So what actually works that you can share?
It's as soon as you go into manufacturing floors that never done automation before, I love to find what I call my MacGyver of the plan. The engineers that the boss know he is.
How does that work with the millennials that don't know
Exactly. And
who's MacGyver?
he's fairly smart, never been exposed to all the most recent technologies, but has the core will to get it done. And to me, those are the best champion possible, because they can still influence, they have the trust of the boss. And they can, if you give them tools that they can self-adopt, they can start to make very beautiful things in their manufacturing floor. For me, there's a thesis that to get there, right, to take the traditional world of Industry 4.0 and bring it to the new world of Industry 4.0, I have a core belief that to get there is going to be about both hardware and software. If you think about the analogy I like to use is music. I'm not sure if you remember, but when I was a teenager, music was free. Now everybody pays $1.29 a song, and it's a beautiful thing that happened that don't happen quite often in the industry to go from free to paying. And Apple did it because they took care of both sides. They took care of the device, and they took care of the amazing software they built, so they had that very convenient user experience, where my mom, that was not able to consume free music, can now. I think the recipe, will be somehow similar. And Tulips is touching that. You have a portion of hardware, you have a portion of software. I'm assuming it's the same thing in your case, right? You need both sides to create those very democratized user experiences that's going to shape that industry.
Yeah, I think what I can add to this is like we kind of arrived at the moment in the industry where it's no longer about any single vendor. It's like basically what we've seen happening for at least a couple of decades in IT is starting to happen in the divide of IT and OT, where things have to talk to each other over standard protocols, standard APIs, and have different emphasis depending on what the specific business needs. And and it's kind of time for ecosystems. Basically, that's what I'm saying. So, Bill, we're just engineers. We don't set the policy or research, but we also need governments and academia to work. So, what is actually happening concretely that you can share with this crowd, or maybe make a call for action that would change the reality that you described, where there's lack of investment, and lack of training that's sufficient to upskill.
Yeah, how are we going to drive change in the system? And it's a key question. And you guys have been talking about the entry of new technologies, IT-driven technologies at scale, and that's going to be a change agent, right? No question about it. But there's institutional reforms that we've got to do too. And so, just one key statistic, right? We have these institutions called community colleges that kind of occupy some very critical space here, for technical workforce education. But their completion rates are typically like 1/3, right? In other words, 2/3 never get to the degree of their certificate, right? If we just turn that one number around, lots of things change. So there's been a lot of experimentation going on in a lot of different places around the country, and we're starting to see the kinds of things that can work. So in Tennessee, they had these vocational high schools all through the state, 27 of them, right? All over the state, rural, urban, everywhere. They turned them into colleges of applied technology. So they kind of upgraded the system, and they decided to turn around the completion rate. And they moved to a completion rate that, frankly, state universities would die to have. They have an 81% completion rate, not 1/3, 81% across not just one school, the entire 27 institutions, right? What are they doing? So before you get to community college, you get tested, And you usually find out that you got to do remedial work. And then community college teachers think they're college teachers. They don't want to teach the remedial work. You get shunted off into a remedial program. You get frustrated. It's just like high school. You don't get to your technical classes. You don't see what your career option might be. You hit a dead end. You drop out. That's one of the two big reasons people drop out of community college programs. So the TCATs decided, look, first, there's no upstairs, downstairs here. Everybody's going to take remedial education. Whether you need a lot or a little, everybody gets it, right? There's not two classes of student. And then secondly, the remedial education is going to be delivered at the same time as the technical education. So you get right to your technical course and you can see what your pathway is. And then the third thing they did was they made the remedial courses highly relevant to what your technical skill area was. And so as a result of this, they have an 86% placement rate of kids and students into the field in which they study, which are rates to die for. So we know we can change these institutions. They use a lot of online education on the remedial side, by the way. And there's new change agent kind of tools that we can start to apply.
That's great. It's great. It's great because you're giving us hope that change is actually possible.
Change is possible.
And yeah, I think when it comes to the humans on the shop floor, you heard some good perspective from what's happening in the next generation of training, the next generation of organizations, and how we actually enable the folks who do the work to use technology. There's still a lot more to do, but this is all the time we have for today for this panel. So with that, I want to thank you all very much for sharing your perspectives, and for everyone here as well. And thank you for coming.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Bill.
Pleasure.